Okay, RIP Gym members, should know me by now, Dr. Almeida, the managing member of RIP Gym, and here with a new video, bringing it together uh, with Yaxeni Oriquin, my partner in the gym. And we are now entering the summer of 2017. A lot of folks getting ready for bodybuilding shows, a lot of people getting ready for the beach. So diet is a big topic right now. So let's talk about dieting, and we're going to focus on the low carb diet. There's different diets out there. We'll mention them, but my focus here will be for bodybuilding shows. So the last 10 years I've been competing and doing these diets, and that's what we'll focus on. Of course, Yaxeni's the one that taught me how to diet. She's been doing it for 20 years. You don't need to take it to the extreme that we're going to talk about for a show. Getting down to 5% body fat is tough, but the same principles will apply to whatever you want to do if you just want to lose weight and get in better shape. Okay? So the main principle is if you're calories in and calories out. So if you're counting calories, which we don't tend to do in bodybuilding, but if you count calories, if you're taking in more calories than you burned, you're going to gain weight. If you're not taking in enough calories, you're going to lose weight. It's really that simple. But in bodybuilding, we focus more on the macros, and there's these calculators available online, which are pretty helpful. This one's from bodybuilding.com, where you can plug in your age, sex, weight, your goals, and activity level, and it'll calculate what you need. So recall we've discussed our macros, our protein, carbs, and fats. For my purposes, for bodybuilding purposes, I'm going to take in about 1.5 grams per pound a day. The carbs, about 1.5 grams per pound a day, and the fats are less, 0.5 gram per pound. So for me, at around 200 pounds, that means 300 grams of protein I need to take in a day. So that would be 50 grams divided, 50 grams times 6 meals will give me 300 grams of protein for the day. So that's what I do, eat 6 times or every 3 hours or so and take in 50 grams of protein. And I do that year round. The carbs, about the same, so about 300 grams a day of carbs divided over 6 meals, so 50 grams a day. And that's really what we adjust most to get down to low body fat, is the carbs start coming down. You need fats, like we've mentioned, for our cell membranes, cholesterol we need for our hormones. So you need some fat, you need good fats. And then instead of really counting calories, we look at ourselves and just see how things look in the mirror. And of course, there is the almighty caliper. So the only way to really know when the truth comes out is you get the caliper and you pinch 7 sites and you calculate your fat percentage. And that's really the tail of the tape. That's where it all comes out, the truth of what you're doing. So that's what we do. We adjust these macros based on the caliper and our weight and whatnot. All right. Recall, and I keep repeating this because it's important, that glucose stimulates insulin. Our carbs get broken down to a basic molecule called glucose. Glucose is then burned for energy, and our energy source is ATP. So if you have glucose around, insulin gets stimulated. And recall that insulin needs to bind insulin receptor, and then it will activate a series of reactions that then cause the expression of a glucose transport protein, GLUT4, on the cell membrane. That's how glucose gets in. That's why we need insulin to get glucose out of the blood. All right, we've talked about that before. So if you have a lot of glucose, you're eating sugar rapidly, or you're not eating complex carbs, you're eating carbs too often, you're not allowing the glucose and the insulin to leave your bloodstream, insulin will stay high, and you're not going to burn fat. And then you get fat storage, and inhibition of fat breakdown, which is not what we want. And the opposite issue, when you're starving or during starvation, we don't have glucose, we're not taking in fuel, and our bodies start literally eating themselves, and the hormone there is glucagon. Glucagon is the opposite of insulin, so when there's no energy source coming in, glucagon gets released, and we start making glucose from burning fat and even breaking down protein, which we don't want in bodybuilding. All right, so glucose stimulates insulin, and we want complex carbs so that we don't get insulin spikes. These ketogenic diets or Atkins diets are out there. I'm not a fan, but the idea here is that there's really no carbs, and they're getting their energy source from fat. So fat is getting broken down by fatty acid oxidation, and it still produces that molecule acetyl-CoA. Recall when we're eating carbs, the glucose gets broken down to pyruvate and then acetyl-CoA. It then enters a Krebs cycle in the mitochondria, and it gets these reduced compounds get produced, NADH and FADH, which then requires oxygen to go to the electron transport chain, and through oxidative phosphorylation we make energy, or ATP. Well, if we're not using glucose as our energy source and we're taking in fat, same type of deal. We'll start burning fat for energy because there's no glucose around. We'll make acetyl-CoA, but in this case, it starts making ketone bodies. And ketone bodies get preferentially taken up by the brain in times of starvation. So it doesn't require active transport. It's the only one that can really cross the blood-brain barrier. All right, so that's kind of what ketogenic diets are. Again, I'm not a fan. I just think low-carb diets and low-fat year-round is the way to go. Glycogen is a storage product, so we've discussed this before. When glucose is available and it's not being burned, it'll get stored in the liver and muscles as glycogen, which are glucose chains. For each glycogen unit, 3 units of water are required. So when our glycogen stores are high in our muscles, we feel full and pumped. And when it's depleted, you feel exactly that, flat and depleted. And when we're on these low-carb diets for extended periods of time, trying to get our body fats down to like 5%, well, you'll feel your muscles depleted and your energy is down, and it gets tough. But that's it works. The fat does come off. All right, so that's really it. Why low-carb diets work. Back to a good old insulin. And when there's no glucose available, we start burning fat as an energy source. We need to be careful that we don't allow protein to get broken down, so we need to take in our proteins. All right, so that's just kind of some basics of dieting. All right, thank you.